أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Uh, in our lesson today, inshallah, we shall be talking about recruitment. But before we start our lesson, we'd like to review what we covered in our last lesson, in our last three lessons. So we've already covered in our last lesson, we covered what is human resource planning. We define what human resource planning is, and we also talked in detail about the importance of human resource planning in an organization. And then we also talked about the process of what? Of human resource planning. Now, in our lesson today, we shall be building on our previous lesson. We shall be building on the human resource planning. So remember when you were talking about the human resource planning, we talked about the demand side. That is, if we are in an organization, we normally ask ourselves, this year or next year, how many workers shall we need in our organization? Then there is also the supply side. The supply side is answering the question, where are we going to get these workers? Now, this lesson today is related to the supply part. And that is what is known as recruitment. And in Arabic, recruitment is what is known as a tawdif. Tawdif. And recruitment in military in Arabic, it is known as a tajnid. A tajnid. And another word also for recruitment in Arabic is what is known as al-istiqtab. So in Arabic, we have different words that actually imply to what? Imply to recruitment. So these are the objectives of this lesson. So number one, after covering this lesson, you should be able to understand the features of recruitment and recruitment policy. Number two, explain the benefits of organized recruitment. Number three, enumerate, that is to name the steps in the recruitment process. Then lastly, to define the sources of recruitment. That is, where do we normally get our employees? Where can we get them? So these are the lesson's objectives. So number one, in the introduction, they're telling us the primary task of human resource management is to choose the right kind of person for the right job. So that is the most important role or the important task of the human resource management department in any organization. That is to choose the right kind of person, اختيار الشخص المناسب for the right job في المكان المناسب. So that is the sole role of the human resource department. So this is because the ability of an organization is determined to a great extent by the ability of its workforce. This statement is very important. The ability of an organization. And when you are talking about the ability of an organization, we are talking about the ability of an organization to generate profit, an ability of an organization to increase its sale, an ability of an organization to expand its operation. All these things, they depend on the kind of people you are having in an organization. If you have people in your organization with the right set of skills, knowledge, attitude, capacities, then you are going to achieve your objective as an organization. And the opposite is true. That is, if you don't have the right kind of people, then as an organization, you will not be able to achieve your goals. Now, on to the next slide. So, recruitment provides the first contact for an organization with its potential employees. So, It is only through recruitment that the organization does what? That the organization gets into contact with the potential employees. Because through recruitment, we bring the people together who maybe will work with us. So an organization must have an effective recruitment policy and process to inform candidates about the job openings and persuade them to apply for the available position. So an organization should have an effective recruitment policy. That is, they need to have a siyasatu al-tawdhif al-fa'ala and process al-amaliya to do what? To inform candidates about the job opening. If you are in any organization, you need to have a good recruitment policy. If there is any vacancy in your organization, you need to advertise as soon as possible. You need to inform people. You need to persuade people to apply for the job in the organization. The efficacy of the recruitment process may be measured in terms of the quality and quantity of the applicant pool. And what is the meaning of, in an exam, you can be asked, what is the meaning of applicant pool? Applicant pool means what? The grouping of applicants based on the type of job created by it. So this is very important. I need you to listen carefully. If you want to know if your recruitment process is effective, how can you know if your recruitment policy is effective? You can only know by the quantity and the quality of the number of people who are applying for the job. If, for example, there is Telesom and Telesom is advertising for a job, if Telesom company wants to know to what degree their recruitment policy was effective, then it will look at the numbers. How many people applied for the job? If many people applied for the job, it means that their recruitment policy is very good. If the quality of people who are applying for the job in Telesom company, if the quality is that good, then we can conclude that the recruitment policy is very effective. But sometimes some companies, they advertise for the job and nobody applies for the job. Or if they apply, you can count their numbers, they are not many. So it basically means in that case that the recruitment policy is not good. So if you want to know if your recruitment policy is good, then count the number of people who applied. This is what is known as the applicant pool. The applicant pool, this is the number of people who have applied for the job. The more people apply, the more efficient the recruitment policy is. So a good recruitment strategy should inform qualified individuals about employment opportunities, create a positive image of the company, and provide enough information about the job so that applicants can make comparison with their qualification and interest, and also at the same time generate enthusiasm among the best candidates so that they may apply for the available position. Now, on to the next slide. Now, what is the definition? What is the definition of recruitment? That is at-ta'rif at-tawdhif. What is the definition of recruitment? So here we have 4 definitions. So number 1, they're telling us recruitment means attracting candidates. Attracting candidates, which is primarily a matter of identifying, evaluating, and using the most appropriate source of applicants. Number 2, recruitment is the process of searching for prospective employees and stimulating and encouraging them to apply for the jobs in the organization. Number 3, recruitment is a process to do what? To discover the sources of manpower to meet the requirements of the staffing schedule and to employ effective measures for doing what? Attracting that manpower in adequate numbers. Why? to facilitate effective selection of an effective working force. Lastly, recruitment is the process of doing what? Finding and attracting capable applicants for employment. So the process begins when new results are sought and ends when the application are submitted. The result is a pool of applicant group from which new employees are selected. Now, here we have 4 definitions. Now, if we analyze these 4 definitions, number one, what we realize is that recruitment is a process. Here, Amalia, it is something that is systematic. It is something that has some steps. So it is not something that is ashwaiya, no. It is something that is systematic and something that is planned. Okay, this process involves what? It involves searching. It involves discover. Discover and searching is the same thing. Al-bahth, finding. So we want people to come in our organization. We need to find them. Where are we going to find them? So we are going to find them. There are internal and external sources, as we shall see later. So number one, it is a process of finding people to come and work in our organization. So people will apply. We'll have a pool of applicants. A pool of applicant can have like 100 people. For example, when you advertise for any job, 100 people might apply. So these 100 people, this is the pool. So from this pool, we will keep interviewing until we have a short list of 10 people. And still from these 10, we are going to have a short list of 5. From these 5, we are still going to have a short list until we find the right person with the right set of skills. Now, number one, here, the next slide, what are the features of recruitment? Features means al-khasa'is. Features means characteristics. What are the characteristics of recruitment? So number one, it is a positive act since it attempts to encourage potential applicants to seek jobs in the firm. So it is something that is positive. It is like if we are welcoming people, Ya Jama, we have opportunities in our organization. Can you come? Can you apply? So it is positive. Positive in the sense that we are calling people to come and join us. Number two, it is not a single task. Rather, it involves a series of planned activities. Remember, we said it is a process, and this process requires a lot of planning. Number three, it represents the first contact that an organization has with its potential employees. So that is the first contact with the people who might work with us. Then number four, it proposes to develop an applicant pool in the desired hiring ratio, the number of applicants for a job, to ensure an effective selection procedure. So this process is help us to develop an applicant pool. And from this applicant pool, then we can select. Then it aims to discover and determine the sources of manpower. So this recruitment process, it helps us to know, min aina al-masadir, where are we going to find the potential people who are going to work with us. It intends to locate and reach out to the potential applicants. To locate, to find. We can find them maybe in Somali, or we can find them outside Somali, and we need to reach out to them. That is why you find many organizations, when they are advertising for job, they use different sources: Facebook page, Instagram page, TikTok, their website, or they will go to recruitment agencies. So because these recruitment agencies, they have a lot of connections. So the recruitment agencies will enable us as an organization to get people who are diverse from different countries, different nationalities. Then lastly, it is a function that calls for continued contact between the organization and the community. The element al-istimrariya. So recruitment is something that is continuous, because as the organization is going son, as the organization keeps on operating, there will always be vacancy. People will be leaving the organization, and when they leave, they are going to leave empty positions. And when the empty positions are there, it means we need to recruit. So recruitment is not a one-time thing, bal hiya amaliyatu al-mustamirra. So these are the key features. Now, on to our next point. Our next point is about what? Recruitment policy. So recruitment policy, every organization should have a siyasat at tawdhif. It is just like in a university. In a university, we have a policy for the student. We have the admission policy, we have the examination policy. So we need to have a guideline that is going to help us in the recruitment process. So that book, that guideline is called a policy. So recruitment policy is the guiding principle that governs the HR practices relating to recruitment. So it is the guideline, it is the map. So if we want to recruit, then our reference should be our policy. We cannot start recruiting with our head. You just wake up from your sleep and you just say, okay, we need somebody to come and work with us. No, that is not how recruitment is done. So it provides a broad framework. This policy, it provides a broad framework for the HR department to choose its priorities relating to recruitment. These priorities may include, among others, the gender equation. For example, when you are advertising for any job, many organizations, they normally have the gender policy. So what is the gender policy in our organization? Maybe a third should be male, a third should be female, ila ghairi dhalik. So we cannot just start recruiting with our head. No, we need to follow the policy. What does it say about the gender? Another thing, option for the socially marginalized. Sometimes, especially this normally happen in countries, when the government is recruiting people to the government position, it has to consider all the tribes, all the clans in the country. So there are some groups that are very marginalized. So they also have to be considered in the recruitment. But in many countries, if your tribe is not in power, if your clan is not in power, then you cannot be recruited. So there is a lot of tribalism happening in our countries. And even this thing is happening in some organizations. If the chairman is from my tribe, if the chairman is from my clan, so he will bring the people from his clan. If you are not from the clan, if you are not from the tribe, you cannot work in some companies. And that Islamically, professionally, it's very wrong. So you need to have a policy that is going to guide us in issues related to that. Then sometimes the physically challenged. Sometimes we have people who are disabled. There is a policy. There need to be a policy, so this policy will help them get opportunity. And sometimes there is compassionate appointment for the dependents of the deceased and retired employees. Sometimes maybe your father was working at Somtel company and your father dies, Yamut. So if your father dies, so Telesom will say, oh, we need somebody from his family to come and replace him. So this is called a compassionate. It is something that is called a compassionate appointment. So because your father died and he was the only source of income, so it is fair enough to do what? To let you be in that position. So that is just something brief. Now, what are the features of a good recruitment policy? Number one, a good recruitment policy should be in conformity with the relevant public policy and legislation. Our policy, our recruitment policy in the organization should conform. Conform means it should not go against. it should not go against the public policy and legislation. Every country, the government normally legislates, the parliament, they normally legislate the labor law. So our recruitment should be aligned to the labor law of the country. Then number two, it should supplement the HR policies of the organization. So the recruitment policy should support the HR policy, because the HR, it has a lot of policy. It has the training and development policy, it has the compensation policy, it has the performance evaluation policy. So this recruitment policy, it should supplement the what? The other policies. In other words, it must not contravene the provision of the general personnel policy. So it should not go against the general HR policy. Number three, it must display enough dynamism and progressiveness in its approach to attract the best talent for the organization. Dynamism means there should be some element of takayuf, adaptability. Our recruitment policy should not be jammed, it should not be rigid. We should be flexible and open. You know, it should not be that close. It should be open to people from other countries. You can get employees from other countries, other regions, but don't limit your HR policy to only your country or one region. Then number four, it must constantly strive to make the necessary human resource available to match the skills requirement of the organization. This policy should always strive to ensure that as an organization, we have enough. It should always ensure that there is no gap. It should always ensure there is no deficit. Then lastly, it should ensure equal employment opportunity for all sections of the society. Our recruitment policy should ensure that there is al-adala, that all the people are the same when they are applying for the job. That is, they will be subjected to the same process, they will be subjected to the same interview. Then from that, there will be selection. But unfortunately, in many organizations, they advertise the job, but already they have somebody who is going to work there, you know. So advertising is just a formality, but already they have somebody for that position, which is not good. It's not a good practice. Now, what are the factors governing recruitment policy? So remember, we have our recruitment policy, but there are some factors that actually govern our recruitment policy, and they can be classified into two. So number one, we have the internal factors that guides us, that governs our recruitment policy. Then number two, we have what? We have external factors, al-awamil dakhiliya wal-awamil al-kharijiyya. So how does this al-awamil tu'athir ala siyasat al-tawdif? So this is what we are going to discuss now. So number one, the internal factors. These are inside the organization. So the first factor is the HR policy of the organization. So the overall HR policy of an organization shapes its recruitment policy. Every organization, they have their HR policy. So this HR policy is the one that should govern the recruitment policy. So the HR policy is up, the recruitment policy is down. The recruitment policy, it has to align itself with what? It has to align itself with the general HR policy. So the HR policy presents specific guidelines to HR managers on various matters concerning employment. So the HR policy, it is the one that gives inputs. It is the one that guides the HR managers. If they want to recruit, this is what they should do. If they want to train the employees, this is what they should do. If they want to increase salary, this is what they should do. So this, the what? the recruitment policy should be aligned to that. So number two, another internal factor is the nature of the job, tabiatul amal. So the nature and position of the job in the organization have a bearing on the recruitment policy of the organization. So the recruitment policy may be different for managerial and non-managerial position in the management. For instance, an organization may have to recruit far and wide to fill key position in the management. In the non-managerial position, on the other hand, may be filled by recruiting at a local level. So طبيعة العمل ماذا نعني بهذا? It means that in any organization, we have different levels of operation. And this different level of operation, the recruitment is not the same. So for example, if we are looking for the general manager of any company, we might even go to another country to find a general manager. If you are in Somali, sometimes the general manager, you can even go to Kenya, you can go to Tanzania, go to Egypt, because that is a position that requires somebody who is very competent. But there are non-managerial positions. The non-managerial position, people, we can recruit locally. People from Somali, they can do what? They can fit the position. You know, so every organization, they have their policy related to every position. For example, in many universities, the position of English, they prefer foreigners because they don't have enough capacity of people who can teach English in Somali. So you'll find that if they're recruiting an English teacher, they'll not recruit locally, unless maybe locally there is somebody who's competent and he graduated maybe outside in English, he can get the job. Then number three, reputation of the firm. The goodwill enjoyed by an organization in the labor market also influences its recruitment policy. When an organization has a positive image among the prospective job seekers, it can easily attract the required number of candidates with little effort. You know, the image, as summa, in Arabic it is known as summa. There are some organizations, they have a very good name. So if they just advertise any job, many people are going to apply because the organization has a very good image. They are paying their employees good salary, they are training them, they are giving them transport, they're giving them health insurance. So if any, for example, Dahabshil, I think Dahabshil has a good image. I'm not sure, but I think it has a good image. So for example, if Dahabshil announces any job, you will find thousands of people, they apply for the job because they know the salary is good, the package is very good. But there are some companies, they are inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Like, even if they advertise 10 times, 40 times, 100 times, people will not apply because they have a very bad image. So people know that organization, they don't pay people on time. You know, their contract is not flexible. You know, if you are sick, they don't give you permission. If, there are a lot of negative things. So these negative things are going to impact the recruitment. So if you are the manager of any organization, you always have to ensure that your company has a good image, reputation in the world, in the society. But if you're not having, even Alpha, for example, this Alpha University, it needs to create a very good image. It needs to if the students have any problem, they need to respond to the student. If the student, they have a problem with their marks, with their grades, they need to do what? They need to answer the student. If there is any problem with the fee, they need to listen to the student. But if they're not listening to the complaints of the student, so there will be a very bad image. And the same students will go outside and say, hey, people, don't enroll at Alpha. Why? You know, they don't listen. The teachers are not qualified. This and this. So the image is very important. Then conventional wisdom. Organizations tend to adopt past practices in the future as long as the practices work well. They may change these practices only when it is necessary and unavoidable. The purpose of this approach is to ensure consistency in recruitment practices for a fairly long period of time. However, excessive reliance on past practices may affect the dynamism and flexibility. So here, when they're talking about conventional wisdom, some organization, conventional wisdom, I need you to think of conventional wisdom as the culture. So some organization, they have their culture. So during recruitment, for example, we are in 2025. If they want to recruit, they will tell you, oh no, we have our culture. We will continue using the same culture. So yes, it is accepted to use that culture, but only on one condition: if it is working. But there are some cultures that are very retrogressive; they are not progressive. There are some cultures that need to be improved. So don't rely on cultures that don't work. If it is working, if it was working and still working, no problem. But if it is not working at the past and you are still insisting on it, then you will end up not getting the right kind of people. Now, those are the internal factors. Now, the external factors, which is also very important. So number one, the labor market condition. The demand for and supply of labor in the market influence the recruitment policy of an organization. When there is a shortage of talent, an organization may be forced to adopt aggressive recruitment program to build up its applicant pool. However, it can opt for simple recruitment practices if the supply of workers exceeds the demand. This is very important. I need you to understand this. In any country, remember when you were talking about the human resource planning, we said that sometime when you're talking, remember when you were talking about the labor glut in our last lesson, we said that sometimes you find that, for example, you're in Somaliland and many people are looking for the job. So what will be our recruitment policy? We are not going to stress ourselves. We are just going to relax. Why? Because there are very many people who are looking for the job. So we are not going to spend a lot of money in recruitment. We are not going to spend a lot of money in marketing. Why? Because we have a large pool. Many people are looking for the job. And the opposite is true. When only few people are there in the market, because sometimes there are some jobs, for example, maybe you're looking for a software engineer. The software engineers, there are not many. So you will have to be very aggressive. You will have to advertise in Facebook, advertise in Instagram, advertise using the recruitment agency, because the skill is rare. You cannot easily find those people. So this is how the labor market can affect our recruitment policy. So when we don't have enough, we are going to be very aggressive. But when we have a large pool, we are going to relax because we know we'll just get no problem. Then number two, we have the legal provision. So government policies and legal provision also contribute to the formation of the recruitment policy of an organization. The government always enacts legal provision to protect the interests of the various sections of the community. Organizations consider those provisions while framing their recruitment policy. For example, reservation for various categories for employment in the public sector, the child labor prohibition, and regulation and others, such as provision, have their own influence on the recruitment. So here, different countries, they have different labor laws. In some countries, there is what is known as child labor prohibition. If they find you, for example, recruiting small children to work in your hotel, in your company, then you will be arrested, you will be taken to jail, you will be taken to a court of law. So anybody in some countries, if you're less than, if somebody is less than 18 years, you cannot employ them. That is called child labor. They're supposed to be in school. They're supposed to be learning. They should not be working. So if you go to some countries, your recruitment policy should be aligned to the child labor law. Now, also, in some countries, you find that the government, and many countries are doing in Africa, many countries are doing like this. So government are telling you, if you are a university, for example, they are telling you 90% of the position should go for the local people. This is when the government it wants its people to be employed. For example, the Somali government can come with a policy. Any organization, if you want to employ, 90% must be Somali. That is a policy that it is supporting that many Somalis, they need to get job. So if they go to your company and they find you have 50% Somalis, 50% the foreigners, they're going to ask you, like, what is the problem? Why are you having 50% foreigners and we said 90% should be what? 90% should be Somalis. So that is so our recruitment policy needs to follow the legislation by the government. Then number 3, we have the socio-economic factors. So the changing characteristics of society, like the level of education, the average age of the people available in the market, the economic necessity of the labor force, the licensing and certification requirement to perform a job, the attitude of society towards the weaker section like women and the physically handicapped have an effect on the recruitment policy. Similarly, the availability of technology as a substitute for the workforce also has an impact on it. So here, we're basically talking about the socio-economic dynamics. When we are talking about the socio-economic dynamics, we are basically talking about the level of education in a country. It is going to affect our recruitment policy. Are the people educated? In some countries, when you go, many people, they have degrees, many people, they have masters. So it means we have competent group pool of people. But in some countries you go, they don't have enough people who have graduated. So they will be forced to recruit. For example, if you go to Gulf countries, if you go to UAE, if you go to Kuwait, if you go to Qatar, if you go to Saudi Arabia, you will find that majority of the workforce there, they are not from their countries. They are from other countries. Because there people don't learn, they are not educated. They have money for petrol, so they don't care about education. So the accountants, the engineers, the teachers, they come from other countries. So the economic background is very important, you know. Then we also have things like the perception of people. In some countries, how people think about women working. Should they work or they should not work? In some countries, they will tell you, no, women, they should only sit in the house. The men, they will provide. But in some countries, they say, no, women also, they have to work. And so it is something that is debatable, you know? So these are things that can affect our recruitment policy, you know? Then the physically disabled. There are in some countries, there are some policies also for people who are disabled. So we shall continue after the break. We still have 1 minute remaining. So after the break, I will send another link. So then lastly, there is the availability of technology as a substitute for the workforce also has an impact. So in some countries, for example, now there is the AI. The AI is replacing people. So many countries, and it has brought a lot of issues in many countries. Now, if AI is replacing people, where are these people going?